Good afternoon and welcome to Law and Crime. I'm Angelica Spanos. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. The first of the opening statements we've heard so far, this is from the prosecution. We're going to break this all down for you today. With me today, Joseph Scott Morgan, Jacksonville State University forensic death investigator, as well as Ann Bremner, trial attorney. Thank you both for being with us today. Ann, I'll come out to you first. The prosecution's openings we've only heard a little bit so far. We're going to get into it a bit more. But what do you think? Do you think that the state has a strong case here?
I don't. I think it's a really, by the way, I apologize. I think my cat just came in to visit, but he wants to be a movie star, I think. But it's not the kind of case we have a lot of evidence. That's why we have a retrial, and you've got an alternative explanation. So the prosecutor basically has to hit the ball out of the ballpark in opening statement, but I don't know if they can.
And what about the defense? Do you think the defense has a good chance of pointing the finger at someone else here?
Yeah, because there's evidence to do that. Usually when you're pointing the finger at somebody else, we used to call it the Saudi defense. Some other dude or dudes did it. You kind of have some kind of speculation and alternative explanations. But here they have actual evidence, and that's rare, and they're going to use it. Right.
All right, Ann, thank you. We're going to move on and listen to more of the prosecution's openings. Let's listen. All right, so more from the prosecution there. Ann, one of the things you said before was that you don't think they have a solid case here and that the state is going to have a bit of an uphill battle. Talk about some of those challenges you think they're going to face and why.
Well, he killed his own son. I mean, that's the place to start. And then the fact it was so brutal to kill, others, including his girlfriend, and $20,000 in child support. I mean, it doesn't seem to be a sufficient motive for such a brutal slaying. And then you've got the lying about the phone. And then evidence in a phone that he was actually there when he said he was not there. But that's a lot to hang your hat on, or I should say a little to hang your hat on as a prosecutor in terms of strong evidence to suggest that he committed these murders.
Right, and we haven't heard the defense's opening statements yet, but they, are basically saying that this is all part of this drug cartel, this big horrific murder by someone that is part of this drug cartel because Brandy was allegedly, transporting or moving drugs for them. And Joseph, let's have you weigh in on this because this is a really horrific murder. The photos that the jury saw, the details we've heard here so far, not very gruesome. Talk about drug cartel murders in general, or if you've ever seen anything like this.
Yeah. On a couple of occasions, both in New Orleans and the Atlanta area where I worked, and they are particularly brutal. Many times when I would be working these cases, though I am
is that A6?
A death investigator working for the medical examiner, I would hear a lot of the drug investigators that were around there, and they would always talk about messaging and this idea that a message was being sent, and generally that is kind of communicated through the level of violence. And you have a significant amount of violence here. And one of the things that's very interesting about this, and I think that we'll get into it a little bit later, is the extent of injuries that Ms. Peters has sustained and the nature of those injuries. I'd like to dive into that a little bit later, but just suffice it to say that this level of brutality is many times associated with drug cartels. And we cannot, just to play devil's advocate for a second, we cannot completely discount that you see a high level of violence in intimate homicides as well. So that's kind of the crossing of swords, if you will, in courtroom that's going to take place here between the prosecution and the defense, I think, as far as the evidence goes.
Right, and you mentioned the wounds and the things that were found on Brandy Peters. Well, the ME did testify this morning, and we are going to be able to talk about that with you because the findings there very interesting and a lot that I know you'll be able to weigh in on. We want to play you another part of the prosecution's opening statements where they do mention the DNA. Let's listen. All right, so we hear the prosecutor there talking about Segura's DNA that was allegedly found on the bathtub grab bar. And basically they're saying that that is obviously placing him in that bathroom. Joseph, talk about that.
Okay, well, yeah, they're placing him in that bathroom. He's also got a child that resides there as well. He's been in an intimate relationship with this woman. I think that this can be potentially easily explained away by the defense. And also, one of the troubling things is that in his statement, the first thing he went to regarding the expert that's going to be testifying is the fact that he has to deal with cases where there is very little DNA, where they're replicating DNA, and there are different procedures in order to facilitate that. So I think from a logic standpoint, what the jury might be hearing at this point is saying, oh, okay, well, they didn't have a lot of DNA, so they've got to call in this hotshot expert to come in and take a look at it and just to assess what's going on. I think that's another area that the defense can exploit.
Right. All right. Well, we will see, and we will continue to break down this trial. We got to take a quick break right now on Law and Crime. Joseph Scott Morgan and Bremner, thank you both. We'll be back after this.